Hello, you amazing people out there, and welcome to the Amazing Action Comics podcast, where we are all about independent comics. I am one of your hosts, Angel, with John Pepe.
How's it going, Angel?
Well, I'll tell you this much, John. It feels weird because it's Monday, not Thursday. And so we're
You've
gonna
got
have two
Monday energy.
podcasts this week.
You have Monday energy. I noticed.
I do have Monday energy. Yeah, gang. So we're going to welcome you to the show, but for most of you guys know, we're usually on Thursdays, but I didn't want to wait till next Thursday because we have some books coming out and something happened this Thursday, so we're doing it Monday. And then we're gonna be switching up some times too because life changes are happening. But Thursdays will still happen, probably just at a different time when it comes to the indie comic review. And we have some exciting stuff going on too. We have a couple of people lined up for the indie creator spotlight, so we're excited about that as well. So look out for those. But welcome to another episode of the Indie Comic Review. This is episode 131. Wow, we're gonna make 3 years, bro. That's gonna be crazy, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right. Well, I'm not gonna count my chickens before they hatch, but yes, we're close to that 3 year mark, which is fantastic. All right. So if you don't know what the Indie Comic Review is, this is where John and I take books off the shelf each week of independent or small press comics, take a look at them, review them, and then give our 2 cents and recommendations as to whether or not they should be picked up. Just a couple of rules that we always have is we never shit on books because as creators, we know how difficult it is to create these things and get them out there into the world. So if they're not for us, they're not for us, but they could be somebody else's cup of tea. So we just, try to give as best analysis as we can when it comes to reading some of the stuff, because some of it tickles our fancy and some of it just goes way over our head sometimes. But it's all good. But before we get there, I think we have like 4 books this week, which is great. We're still not going to review The Savage Sword of Conan because I haven't got my freaking copy yet. But as soon as we get my copy, then yes, we can talk about it. We have a bit of news for this week. I think we'll start with the sad stuff first because I want to get that stuff out of the way. It just seems like every other week or something like that, we're just talking about somebody who's left us in the realm of this medium. This one, really, it's probably one of the grandfathers of this particular medium. You want to hit it, John?
Yeah, wow. So Akira Toyama, I don't know. I'm really bad at that pronunciation, but
Toriyama.
Toriyama, thank you very much. He created Dragon Ball. I mean, I got started as Dragon Boy in 1983. In 1984, he retitled it Dragon Ball. I didn't realize it had been around for that long. But boy, talk about having an impact. I mean, that is one property that has really impacted so many people in the 40 years that it's been around. And people still come to it as new readers, and you have your diehards. I was never really into the Dragon Ball thing, but I absolutely recognize its impact, and I recognize his skill. And boy, what an amazing job that he did creating this. And definitely a visionary, very talented, 68 years old. Like all great creative visionaries who do amazing things. He was a recluse, very much like Steve Ditko, which I thought was very interesting. Whatever he would do, he had these like slice of life strips he would draw. He would always draw himself wearing like a gas mask, because he just didn't want that attention, which is very interesting. But yeah, 68 years old, very young, but what a legacy he left behind. Another thing I actually learned earlier today, besides Dragon Ball, the whole concept of chibi, or what used to be known as super deformed, right now is known as chibi. He sort of was one of the innovators, or one of the first people to do that, I believe, within the Dragon Ball stuff. So even if you're not into Dragon Ball, but you recognize or respond to that type of style, that's you owe him.
Which is the Scotty Young style. No,
sort of Scotty Young. But it's the oversized head with the big eyes. Which has been definitely Americanized throughout the years as well and co-opted. I remember.
Yeah, if we look at a lot of the posts from sort of like the influences, I mean, because you're talking about manga and anime. I mean, that Dragon Ball Z broke into everything, right? So it was a manga, it was animation. I mean, my boy growing up, I mean, that's all he would watch. And it's funny because the animation had like maybe 2 minutes of actual animation. Everything else was just stock footage. It was just like an episode or a particular scene. Actually, I shouldn't even say an episode. A scene of a fight could go on for like 10 episodes because they would just move it along like 2 minutes at a time, which is crazy. So it was like the most soap opera kind of like animation you could ever watch, but people just loved it.
Really
And,
dense and drawn out storylines too. Like,
yeah, big time. But people loved it, and I loved it growing up as well. I never read the manga stuff, but I got into the animation. You got video games. You got a movie that was made out of it as well. So it touched pretty much every corner of media that you could possibly think of, which was pretty cool. And the amount of impact that he had on artists that we love today. So, we wouldn't have certain artists, reading from a lot of the posts that I was reading today, if, not for his influence. So he definitely touched a lot of people, definitely just became mainstream for sure in that amount of time and been around for a while. So, yeah, just, sad to say, but another loss, but, there'll be some Dragon Balls up in heaven, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. What else do you got?
So really quick, the Oscars were last night, and a big win, I think, for a lot of the folks who love the stuff that we love was Godzilla -1. Won an Oscar for the effects, right? Which was really, I don't know the exact name of the award, but yeah, the special effects, the visual effects award. And it was really funny because all the people who won, who worked on that movie, and I guess the director was also part of the special effects team. They all had Godzilla, like little Godzilla figures, and they all on their shoes had these like heels that attached that were like Godzilla claws.
Oh my
which is
God,
kind of
really?
neat. So they were ready. They were absolutely ready. So I know AJ's our friend AJ is very, very happy. He said 6-year-old him was doing backflips last night because Godzilla actually won an Academy Award. But something that's a little more closer to our shared love of pop culture was there was a great moment. I know you didn't see it, so I'll give you a quick rundown of it, where Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger came out to present an award. And they the riff was basically, their little bit was but I'm sure you're wondering why they put us together to do this. And you're like, oh, it's going to be a twins thing, and instead they go into we both beaten by Batman. And DeVito goes to Schwarzenegger, how did Batman beat you? And Schwarzenegger goes with my greatest weakness, the power of love, if you remember Batman around.
Yeah, right.
And then and Schwarzenegger goes, how did he defeat you? And DeVito's like, well, he just dropped me out of a window. It's true. He goes, it's true. And so then they're like, they look at the audience, they go, look, there he is. There's Batman now. And a camera goes on Michael Keaton. And it was really funny because Michael Keaton had presented earlier and he's wearing like, with the full tux with the bow tie and everything.
Right.
But for this bit in the audience, he's no bow tie. He's got the ascot, like, the Bruce Wayne ascot. He's just sitting there stone faced the whole time. They're like, come on, Batman, let's go. Let's fight. And he just goes like that, and it was a really funny classic.
Oh, that's
bit.
funny.
And yes, obviously we all know that Schwarzenegger's Batman didn't fight Keaton's Batman, but the jokes landed. It was great. It was really funny. And it reminded me of something that when Twins came out in like December of 1988, I remember seeing it an opening night in the theater, and in front of that movie was the very first Batman 1989 trailer. And it was, if you've ever seen this trailer, it's out there on YouTube. It has none of the music, none of the Danny Elfman music. It's the first time you were seeing any of this in live action. I think there may have been like one picture of Keaton in the suit floating around out there, but it's the first time you saw Jack in makeup, and it kind of sets up the story. And boy, what an amazing and powerful trailer at that time. In some ways, I think that trailer without the music and just the way it's cut and what you think the movie's going to be is better than what the actual movie ended up being. And that's no slight to the actual movie or the Danny Elfman soundtrack, but there was just like an eeriness and a mysterious quality to that first trailer that I think really sold the film. Again, this was they rushed the trailer out to quell a lot of the heat that Keaton was getting from being cast. But so I thought that was an interesting little connection there with Twins also being the first time that I know that I saw that trailer. So that was neat. So.
Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff on. I mean, I didn't see it because I was busy watching the CONCACAF Gold Cup. So for those of you that are soccer fans, the women's were playing last night. It was U.S. versus Brazil, and dude, it was probably one of the most brutal and physical matches that I've seen in a while. And it ended up being 1-0 with the U.S. winning. So they won the
Nice.
final, which was fantastic. But yeah, Brazil made them work really, really hard. And if you don't like soccer, you can bugger off because it's probably the number one sport in the world.
European football.
Yeah, yeah, European football. But it was good. It was good. It was good. Yeah, but then there was other things that I was watching. Stuff pops up on the feed with the Oscars. The Ryan Gosling Ken song.
That was good. He did a
Uh,
good job. That was fun. Yeah.
and it was a hit.
Yeah.
And then Oppenheimer walking away with a ton of awards.
Yeah.
And I still haven't seen it. It's available now on HBO Max.
Yeah.
I got to take time to see it because I think it's like 3 hours long or something.
3
like
hours, but they say
movies
it doesn't feel like 3 hours. But you know what? My clock says different.
I went to go see Dune Part 2 yesterday, and I nodded off twice.
The
No
fracas
spikes in
on
the movie.
Arrakis.
Yes. The movie was fantastic, and it wasn't that I nodded off because it was boring. It nodded off because I was so long, and my daughter had to hit me twice to say, "Dad, stop snoring." But it was really good.
Yeah, I saw the David Lynch Dune back when that came out. Haven't seen these two new Dunes. I know they're fantastic. It's sand. I hate sand. It gets everywhere. It's irritating.
It's not. It's spice. So get it right. It's all good. All right. Anything else?
So the other thing, really just a little bit of news. We're gonna go into the indie comic realm with a nice little segue here before we get to our reviews. One of our favorite publishers, Scout Comics, they always had a really good output. Haven't seen much from them in the last few months. And I know the few publishers as well, like Aftershock. We know that they're still crawling their way out of their financial situation. So with a lot of series just sort of ending, stalled in the middle for Aftershock. So hopefully they can get back on their feet. I know Opus has had some issues with not paying creators to the point where Rosetta's family had to release a statement basically and saying, look, we're suspending any of our licensing books with them until they can get that straightened out. And now Scout Comics apparently has another issue or a few issues as well. I know there's at least one creator out there being very vocal about how he has a book that's been out, a one shot that's been out for over a year. He hasn't seen payment from them. But apparently there was an announcement that they will be coming back with a sort of a new imprint. And it's going to be, I think, a partnership with Element Media Global. So they're going to provide financial backing for the expansion. It's the new Dark Harbor Comics imprint, which is they've already had a couple other imprints as well. Black Caravan, I know, was one of theirs.
Right.
And the Scout Launch Initiative apparently will create industry jobs, and they claim the partnership does aim to revolutionize the comic book market. I'm just reading some bullet points from an article on Bleeding Cool by Rich Johnston from March 6th, if you really want to actually dive deep and read that article. That's one of the good things about Bleeding Cool. They do have a good insight onto what is going on behind the scenes with a lot of independent comic companies, and they do keep an eye on this stuff, especially in regards to, when creators don't get paid by publishers, which is always a bad situation because that work was done. The books were sold, right?
Yeah. It's misjudging the overhead on that. Or somebody's greed. Does it have a timeline?
For when this launch? I think I saw something like spring, summer. But I'm not going to necessarily hold anybody to that because of the way things are,
Right.
So we'll see, but I do hope they can straighten all of that out and take care of their creators and put out some good content again, because they were one of the smaller presses that I really enjoyed what they were coming out with. So
yeah, they had quite a bit coming out at one point, and then all of a sudden, I just don't know what happens there. It could just be mismanagement on the back end as well. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into being a publishing house and, working with different creators and different timelines and different distributors and stuff like that. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I don't know if there was a mishap in there, but yeah, I mean, the only company that I can think of right now that's kind of like new or newish that, had their gimmick and still doing really well is just Bad Idea. If you look at the way that they've kind of like they cycle themselves, so they'll have a list of titles that I believe, I'm almost positive those books are complete, and then they solicit them, then they distribute them, and then they're quiet for a while, and then they'll pick up again when a new set of books are complete and done. So they've kind of managed this sort of like waving in and out kind of thing, and every time they come back up with new titles, they're still quite popular. I mean, we sold quite a few at the shop, so I think their gimmick that they have is quite cool.
Well, their
in
gimmick
regards
is
to being able to stay.
Yeah, their gimmick and the sort of like the bad boys of the indie comic scene, that kind of thing that they're trying to put out there, and they make their fans jump through all sorts of crazy hoops, and I think it's really fun, and it just generate buzz and excitement. The giveaways, the first person to buy the Bad Idea comic on a Wednesday gets a button that then they can keep or redeem for stuff. And I think that's great. It drives people into the stores on Wednesday. My only concern with Bad Idea was they came in really hot and heavy that first wave. And then they did the whole Bad Idea is done. We're not doing anything. And then they came out with another wave, and it was slightly less titles than the initial one. And then this most recent one at the top of the year, or at the end of last year, I forget exactly when it was, but it was the end of last year. Only 2 titles. It was 2 one-shots. And my concern about Bad Idea is your output is getting less and less. There's more space between announcements that I fear that they might lose that momentum that they built up. It could go in the other direction. It could be like, in a year from now when they announce something else and it's going to be huge and people are going to respond, or the way things now move so fast and the finickiness of the consumer can change on a dime, that I do worry that whenever they do make their next big announcement, it's not going to land with the impact that previous ones have.
Yeah. Well, I guess, we'll have to see. Time will tell, because, I mean, you could also have it where it does land and, they take off. And I think just because the market is so saturated with a ton of stuff out there, I think the input is probably a smart thing. I mean, to release 5 or 7 books at a time, not knowing whether or not you're going to sell 5 or 7 titles with a market that's so saturated, who knows? I mean, you have Distillery now that's coming out. I think they have 2 books, right? Sumner and Gone, and probably one other one.
They're Blasphemous just launched.
Yeah, they're just launched.
I think there's one more out already, but I know that they have at least 5 to 6 more, or 4 to 5 more titles. The prologues were, in their one shot, that the Devil's Cut one shot, and again, a little skeptical about how that was going to work, because everything is that oversized $8.99 price point.
I'm still skeptical. We'll see how it goes.
But you know what? People are picking it up. People love the product, and so I think they right now they are unique and they stand out on the rack, and I think that is catching people's eye. So we'll see.
Yeah, that big rack. And then there is what's going on? Do we know what's going on with the Ghost Machine?
So Ghost Machine, again, that's the Jeff Johns imprint with Image that started as Mad Ghost and had the Geiger 6-issue, the Junkyard Joe 6-issue, and then rebranded as Ghost Machine, and had the 2-issue Geiger retelling of the origin, and then a preview book announcing all these other books that will be coming out. And I think the first one of those is slated for mid to late March. But again, no gig is confirmed until the band is on stage playing. I think that's another one that the momentum kind of stalled, and there was a little bit of confusion because with the Mad Ghost and the previous Geiger and what's going on now. I think a lot of people weren't sure what was going on. And it's funny because I felt like the push for that was really big at Comic-Con as far as explaining what this Ghost Machine now is. And yet I don't think that made it out beyond the inner circles of the comic community
because we're 5 months later. We're 5 months out from Comic-Con and still nothing. So
just that one shot.
All right, cool. So hopefully we'll get some more news on that, because I was really interested to see what was going to happen with that. But time will tell. All right, cool. Cats, that's the news for now. So we're gonna hop into the indie comic reviews. Like we said, we have 4 books for you. We're gonna have John start off with his first book. So what do you got for us, bro?
So the first one I have is from Ablaze, and it is
Blaze.
Torpedo 1972. And that
Nice.
is written by Enrique Sanchez Abule, illustrated by Eduardo Risso, lettered by Vibrant Studios, and the managing editor for Ablaze is Rich Young. Kevin Kettner is the editor. Amy Jackson's the associate editor. And you have Rodolfo Muraguchi and Julia Stezowski as designers. So for those of you who don't know, Eduardo Risso, it says right up there on top, from the artist of 100 Bullets. 100 Bullets was one of Vertigo's best self-contained series from the early 2000s. If you have not checked that out, definitely check it out. Very hard crime noir, really, really good stuff. Really good hook as well to pull you through those 100 issues. Yes, 1 issue for each bullet. So this is a new series that, like its name says, takes place in 1972 in New York. It's really cool because the opening sequence, you have your protagonist and his girlfriend watching The Godfather in the movie theater, and it actually gives Risso a chance to draw a couple scenes from the opening of The Godfather. The "You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding" stuff. So I thought that was really neat. It kind of made me want to see Eduardo Risso do an adaptation of the Godfather movie. But that sort of kind of gives you a sense of what you're dealing with here, because the main character, who is sort of this man Torpedo, is basically a old school mob guy, who is not a nice person. He is probably a very irredeemable character that they are focusing on here, but the sense of menace is absolutely expertly conveyed whenever this man shows up. And you're following a young reporter who is trying to get an interview to kind of do a profile on this man. His girlfriend is a photographer. They do have this meetup in the park where you basically see this man, feeding pigeons and reading the paper. Just looks like a normal old man feeding pigeons and reading the paper. And he's got his buddy there with him. And then all of a sudden the pigeons just drop dead and his buddy picks him up, and that's how they eat. That's their food. You see them later in the apartment, they cooked and feathered and cleaned and eating the pigeons. So it's kind of, again, just a really off, unsavory guy that you're following here. He has a photo shoot with with the girlfriend for this profile piece that they're writing, and it does not go well. It is another further example of just the depravity of this man, and basically you kind of get pulled into this really dark, grimy, gritty world of New York in 1972, with some real very rough around the edges, old style mobsters who just are continuing to bully their way through life, and sort of take advantage and abuse and hurt the people that they find lesser than them. And I thought that was a really fantastic way to start this story, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. I wonder if there will be a path for redemption for this man who just on this right now feels like there's no room for redemption. So yeah, Torpedo 1972 from Ablaze Comics. Again, Eduardo Risso, master at the dark crime noir comic. His storytelling is perfection. His line work is just, it is so good. You see his influences, but he's not swiping, right? You just see the Frank Miller homage in what he does. What a great artist. It's a really cool vehicle for him, and very impressed by Enrique Sanchez Abuele's writing as well for this story, because it really pulled me in. I needed to take a shower afterwards. It's gross.
All right, gang, check it out if you're interested. All right, cool. I'm next. So normally I wouldn't pick up stuff like this, but yeah, it kind of intrigued me. This is it's actually called Monster Tag Team. These are one shots that American Mythology has been putting out. I didn't know there were previous ones, so I'm gonna see if I can backtrack and get some of them. But this one is the Boogeyman versus the Scarecrow. And so they created a team. We have S.A. Check as the writer. Artist is Roy Allen Martinez. Letters by Rob Jones. And extra features by G.O. Persons. One of the reasons that I picked it up is because it is black and white. And I'm a sucker for some black and white stuff. And I think just horror is just really cool and just kind of like black and white. Because you can work with like these details that, color is cool. I think it'll make a pop too much. It's just something that's lost in translation when you do it in color, but it's just really cool in black and white. Kind of like the black and white films are doing it. But basically, this is a story that's being told by the Boogeyman and how times have changed where because of technology and everything like that, that he can't go around killing people because more often than not, he'll be seen. So rather than fighting that, he's actually gone with the times, and he ends up becoming sort of like this hired assassin. So you can hire the Boogeyman to do jobs for you. And so he's like one of the best assassins out there. He has 300 plus confirmed kills is what he's bragging about. Until he gets to this one guy who he needs to assassinate, ends up shooting him from across the way from one building to another. And it's funny because he's going into like sort of like this crack house, kills those guys because they're there so that he can get to the top floor of the crack house and be able to do his assassination attempt with a gun. So he shoots this guy through the glass, and the guy disappears, falls to the ground where he can't see an angle. So he has to go across just to get the confirmation of the kill, or else he's not going to get paid. And when he gets over there, he's surprised that he sees straw. And he goes, oh, shit. And then that's when he goes down this whole rabbit hole of him chasing this one guy for a really long time. But then he goes into like the sort of like the mythos of the Scarecrow and how like, and it's funny because as he's telling the story of the Scarecrow, he's sort of doing it in sort of like a sarcastic manner. So he's like, yeah, the Scarecrow thinks he's all that because he was enlightened by the Almighty to come to life. And they called him Adam, whatever. Kind of thing. And then so from that point forward, they created all these other scarecrows. So he had a wife, and they created all these freaking scarecrows throughout time. So they're alive. And they're rather than them being a monster, they're actually saviors of humanity. So he goes on to tell them that they have basically two weaknesses. One, fire, and two, their love for humanity. So they're always going to be jumping in the way of the human who's going to be, hurt in some way or another. And then eventually he catches up to him. I'm not going to give away the ending because it's quite funny. At the end, it's sort of like a twist. It almost reminded me of Mad's Spy versus Spy. So there's this back and forth for all this time of, who wins, who doesn't win kind of thing. But it was interesting. I thought it was going to be just crappy and I wasn't going to enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, if you read American Mythology already, that particular imprint, you're probably reading these books anyway. If you like black and white stuff, if you want to read something that's similar to like, and you don't have to commit, up your alley, guys. This is actually a really quick and fun, easy read. Really great, art. I love sort of like the panel-to-panel layouts. Just really, really easy to read. And with black and white too, it can get really convoluted and really hard to read. But never was I lost. I mean, there's really good use of negative space in here. The lettering is really great. Like the way the boxes are positioned just don't affect the art at all. And it just kind of just moves the story along. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Check it out, Monster Tag Team. I'm going to see if I can get the back issues of the other one. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if American Mythology actually collects these the one shots into a trade or something. But I enjoyed it. Check it out.
Very good.
All right.
All right. Here it is, Angel. From IDW. Golgotha, Motor Mountain.
Dude, that is a mouthful.
It is. So this, oh boy, this book. Okay, so this is IDW. This is written by Matthew Ehrman and Lonnie Nadler. Illustrated by Robbie Rodriguez. Colored by Marissa Louise. Lettered by, I've never seen this guy ever before do any lettering, Hassan Atmani Allahu. Edited by Dave Weigels. assistant editor Jake Williams, design and production Nathan Wittick. So this is IDW celebrating their 25th anniversary this year. So they got the little, little logo there, which used to be. So this was originally, I remember seeing the ad for this months ago. Wow, over a year ago now, I guess, when the IDW Originals initiative started, with some really good stuff that kind of came out of there that I've enjoyed.
Yeah, Dark Spaces that we read.
Yeah, the Dark Spaces stuff. I'm blanking on it, but the fast food Satanist miniseries was great. They're all like good, like 5-issue miniseries, and they do a really good job. And this one, I think it had an earlier date according to the ad, and then just kind of never showed up. And now here it is. And I remember the ad really intrigued me, and so I picked this up, and I at first regretted picking this up, and then really just sort of fell in love with this and then it made me question, like, what kind of a person am I that I enjoyed this. So so I'm going to lay it out there. It is Breaking Bad meets John Carpenter's The Thing, by way of Daft Punk. And I don't know if you remember the KLF, Justified and Ancient. There's a little bit of KLF thrown in here too, according to my sensibilities. And okay, so you have these two brothers in Golgotha County, Kentucky, and they make meth. And one day, a space meteorite crashes into their barn, which is their lab, and destroys their meth cook. Right? They what they were about to sell, they can't sell now. But they have this giant pink meteorite that they're like, you know what? If we just crush this up, it's going to look like the pink meth that's going around. So we'll just crush this up and sell it. And so they go to make this deal, right? And of course, one of them is forced to sample it in front of the people that they're buying it, and he does, and then everybody else kind of at that buy does it as well, and then the body horror begins, and like basically, like that's kind of what's going to happen to folks. I'm going to just find one really good sort of awful page here, where you just erupting out of his back. Right, because this is meteorite dust from outer space, and this should not be in the human body. And boy, is it cool! It is so cool. And I think it's a 5-issue. What a great setup. I think down the road, if I remember the original ad correctly, like it almost looks like there's even going to be some sort of like Mad Max Road Warrior Fury Road type, like muscle car races around this motor mountain. But boy, what a great setup. It is, it is horrifying. It is humorous. It will, like I said, make you question why you like this so much. And it's just the beginning, and I really can't wait to see where this goes. Really interesting characters that you wouldn't normally necessarily want to follow, these two brothers, but you're stuck in there with them. It will, it'll make you want to take a shower afterwards, just like Torpedo 1972, but in a very different way. Golgotha Motor Mountain, man. Yeah, this is just insane. And I love that weird stuff like this is out there, and that comic companies like IDW, Image, Dark Horse, Scout, Ablaze, that they allow these creators to just run wild and do crazy shit like this, because this is what it's about.
It's funny because when I picked it up, the color palette reminded me of somebody who was tripping on acid.
Yeah.
So, and I'm pretty sure that's done with on purpose.
Oh, it is a trip, man.
But it looked interesting. All right, guys, check it out if you're interested.
If you like squirrels and chipmunks and stuff, and you don't want to see any body horror happen to them, tough.
Yeah,
because that happens too.
Nice. All right, cool. So I have the last one. Continuing with IDW's 25th anniversary books. This if you read the first one, this is The Last Ronin 2 Re-Evolution. The first one, obviously, Last Ronin, and then we had The Last Ronin Lost Years. We kind of introduced the people in this book. So if you don't know what The Last Ronin is actually sort of like an Elseworld. It's off the main timeline of the Turtles book, and this is sort of like a retelling of what happens with the four brothers, or the family, I should say, Splinter and the four Turtles. And if you haven't read it, spoilers, they all die except for one, which we end up finding out is Michelangelo. And Michelangelo is found the person responsible for killing his brothers and his father, and is set out on a journey to get revenge. He does get his revenge, but at the cost of his own life at the very end of that book as well. Spoilers, just go out and read it. It's fantastic. And so from that, we got a second book, which is called Last Ronin Lost Years, and it kind of just goes back and forth from Michelangelo losing his brothers and what he's doing up until the full moment that he actually finds out where the person who's responsible for killing his family is, and in that time. But at the same time, we're getting sort of like a future story of four new turtles that are being raised by Casey Jones and April O'Neil's daughter, who's also Casey. And we sort of like jump ahead as they're already grown. And April O'Neil is still alive. She's actually, considered the grandmother of these particular turtles, in this short series. And then all of a sudden we get the spinoff, and then the very first issue of the book, which is basically around those four turtles. Don't ask me what their names are because I still have to memorize them. And then Casey, who's the daughter of Casey Jones, who's leading them, as well as April O'Neil, who's older, obviously, and their adventure now within the city of New York. What was really cool about this book is that we got some answers in regards to sort of how the turtles died, because we never got that in the actual Last Ronin book. We just know that they were dead, and their spirits were kind of like guiding Michelangelo or antagonizing him at times, in that respects. But yeah, we get sort of like a full story from the beginning of that the relationship between Splinter's sensei and Shredder, how they were best friends until this female came between them, and then Shredder, I forgot his real name, killed Splinter Sensei's girlfriend. And Splinter had learned all the moves that he learned from his sensei. He was killed, and then found the four turtles, and the bat of ooze. They all got mutated into what they were, and then they ended up getting revenge and killing Shredder, and then that's how the whole thing ensued in regards to Shredder's son wanting to get revenge. And then ended up killing the turtles and stuff like that. And then Michelangelo ended up getting his revenge at the very end, like I said, at the cost of his life. And then we get these four turtles who were introduced to the TCRI ooze as well, and with Casey raising them and training them with the guidance of April O'Neil as well, who's sort of like the tech person for the group. And instead of, I believe at this point, the Foot has been abolished, but now there's all these new gangs that are rising up, and this particular gang called the Yorkville Warriors. They've been kind of plaguing the city, and every time Casey Jones and her rebellion group, which are not the Turtles, it's just a group of humans that she has, have pushed them back. They come back, but they always come back slightly different, which means they either come back with more people, they come back with new particular moves. So they're learning each time that they're getting defeated, and they're just growing in numbers. So they're sort of like being a plague onto the city, and Cassie has taken it upon herself with this revolutionary group to protect the city. And then you see the police later on being involved or being questioned by the reporters as to what's going on with all these kind of gang wars, and the police kind of like brushing it off and pushing it away to kind of like just keep it under the bed as to nothing's going on. But everybody knows that there's trouble going on in the city. So you have sort of like, so then towards the very end of this, we have the Turtles having their first opportunity to actually get out into the open and be part of the revolution, because they're so stretched thin. Casey, her guys, There's a couple of other groups. They're so stretched so thin among themselves with different groups that are coming up out of the woodworks, that even she had to give in and say, okay, guys, here's your shot to prove yourself. You've been training all your lives for this. And it's cool to kind of see the dynamic between the four of them, because there's some similarities to Michelangelo and Leonardo and Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello with these guys. But one, I think, is a female. There's 3 males. They also have telepathic ability, so they can speak to each other without actually saying anything. They're telepaths, so they have a power that the original Turtles didn't. So it's interesting to see what they're doing with this particular book. I love. I know most people won't, but freaking Cassie's design, she's jacked as shit. And I think, in order for you to be able to just beat up a ton of freaking dudes and stuff like that, you need to be jacked. And she's like armed to the teeth and stuff like that. She's still about no killing. So it's just about, maiming these guys down and shooting them down and letting them go and saying, listen, don't come back or it's just going to get worse. And I think her group is kind of getting tired of that. Where they feel like they need to start striking some of these guys down so that they don't come back, if you get my drift. But it's cool to kind of see sort of like an extension of the lore of the Turtles, or actually after the Turtles. I think there's definitely, if you're a Turtles fan, I think there's a place in the pantheon of Turtles where these guys are actually going to have a shot to have some longevity, if they do it well. The art's great, the storytelling great, so far is great. I think what we're missing right now is sort of like a really good antagonist. So if we get somebody that is not just a dope, just somebody who just wants to be evil just for evil's sake, but somebody who has some meat and bones in their background, and can really do some damage here to these guys, then I think you got yourself. I think if something happens really bad to April, I'm just, throwing it out there into the universe, then you're gonna have a really good hook on this book and stuff like that, because she's definitely up there. She's sort of like the last, I would say, stronghold to the old storytelling of the Turtles. She's like sort of that last link to the past. So I think, yeah, because Casey Jones, everybody else, they're all dead. Mm-hmm. So April is the only one alive, and Cassie's taking it upon herself to train these Turtles along with April, and yeah, we've got ourselves sort of like a new legacy of the Turtles. So I know I didn't read the creative team, but let me do that really quickly because somebody's still involved. So you got story by Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman, who's one of the original halves. Peter Laird would have been the other. How long ago was it that he sold out? Like it's been a while.
It's been
it was right before the Nickelodeon deal, right?
Yeah, at least 20 years, maybe a little longer. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And was it Laird or was it Eastman that did the whole Nickelodeon thing? I can't remember.
It's weird because didn't it like all go to Laird and then it all went to Eastman or something? I forget. Weird. It's gone back and forth, but yeah. But
there's a documentary out there somewhere.
Yeah, Eastman I think has really been the controlling for some time now.
Now he has, yeah, and he's been doing like a ton of B covers on the main line, so he's still active when it comes to covers. Not so much sequential work, but definitely still doing his thing.
And he's been doing the variant covers on all these Last Ronin ones too. He's been doing covers.
Correct. Yeah, and I think he's had his hand, and maybe he's had the story in his pocket for a while. But I think this is such it's not your regular Turtles where no one dies. This is one of these where it's a little bit more grown up. And there are consequences for things that happen and what you do. So yeah, definitely involved. Art is by Isu and Isaac Escorza. And they show what pages that they're responsible for. Also Ben Ishop on art, responsible for some pages. Colors by Luis Antonio Delgado. Letters by Sean Lee. I'm really digging this so far. Haven't read the main Turtles book in quite some time. Just because, they're over... I don't know how many issues right now.
149 and the march to 150, and then after 150, I think it's going to be a new number one. I don't know if it's going to be a reboot or if it's going to be, but there's going to be something that happens in 150 that is going to be a catalyst for what's going forward, because this is a big year for the Turtles. It's the 40th anniversary of their creation. So IDW has great big plans. This is one of them, which is great. People love this Last Ronin series. They respond well to it. I did want to talk about the size size of the book.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we were talking before about Distillery with the tabloid size or magazine size, record album size. Like a lot of DC Black Label stuff, which they call Prestige Plus. But this is slightly wider than a regular comic,
just a little
but
bit,
a half inch and almost about an inch taller than a regular comic. So again, pops on the shelf, stands out on the shelf, but is not overly intimidating like a big Prestige Plus, right?
And square bound.
And it is square bound as well, which was interesting because when they did the second printings or the subsequent printings on Last Ronin 1 recently, they were the same size, but they were stapled. They were not square bound. Yeah. So, and I think it's great, especially for Last Ronin and now Last Ronin 2 Re-Evolution, to be in those formats, because I think it really unifies them. And then the sort of interlude in the middle, the sequel with the prequel wrapped into it, the Lost Years, was more regular comic size.
Yep.
So I think that's really, I think it's cool that they are shifting around and that they are keeping the proper Last Ronin stories something special in that format. I think that's a really good idea for them to do that and just shakes it up a little bit. I think it's cool.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how many issues this is going to be. I'm just hoping this kind of just sets the tone for their series moving forward, because I think there's definitely some potential for Casey Marie Jones and these new turtles to have their adventures, as long as it's not a regurgitation of antagonists that we've seen in the past. I think they need their own thing, and up to now they've kind of had their own thing. I love that the legacy of the weapons is picked up. So you have 4 turtles, and they've all picked up a weapon from the old turtles, which I love. And to bring in a little bit more. The other thing that I really enjoy too is the differences of the turtles. So they're not all the same turtle. They're different types of turtles. Right. So you have a snapping, a box turtle, and 2 other ones. And throwing in the female into the mix, different color variations on them as well, and then having their personalities be quite different as well, like the original turtles. I think I'm enjoying it. All I'm saying, IDWs, don't fuck this up. Keep it going. This has potential to, have some longevity if it's done right. So, I'd be surprised because I don't remember. I have to go back and read it again because I did buy the hardcover, because I can't remember if it was Shredder's grandson that Michelangelo had killed, if he's actually dead or not. And I'm pretty sure that some other people that escaped, they can come back into the mix down the road. So, last one. Go ahead.
Oh, so I wonder if I've never read up on this. I wonder if Kevin Eastman considers this the capper or the end point to the original Mirage run, which is different from the IDW run, right? Because it's interesting. Yeah, you have that legacy of the Shredder, and Shredder famously dies in the very first issue of Ninja Turtles. So that's kind of interesting. It really does make me want to read it more, because I haven't actually read this stuff, but I just
dude, you have to.
Yeah,
you would love it. So, all right. So again, check it out if you're a Turtles fan or not. I mean, just really, really solid storytelling, great art, and I love the color scheme in here as well. It's really cool. So cool. 4 books that we enjoyed. So you can go to your local comic book shop and ask them to pick them off the shelves. If they don't have it, then tell them you heard it from us, and they must order it for you so that you can have your copy. What was I listening to? I was actually listening to a podcast. I think it was this morning or yesterday, but just talking about the amount of stuff that's in Previews World. Now we have the DC Connect, then you have the Luna catalog, and now you have an IDW catalog. You have the Marvels catalog that most shops, and this was like back, currently now, there's definitely not enough room. There's not enough real estate to carry everything in these catalogs, put it onto the shelves. So we had our episode where we said, okay, here's the catalog that you can look at, and if your particular store doesn't carry it, just go and ask for it and see if they can order it special for you. They should be able to do that, at least for you. So you do have access to the material. It's just shops sell what they can sell. They're not going to put anything out there. And when it comes to pennies and dollars and all that stuff, and and trying to save, you're not going to throw, your hat into a ring on a brand new book that may or may not sell off the shelf. But if you have somebody who's interested, wants to order a copy or two, you order it for them and you go in there. But the person that was doing this particular podcast was talking about how a lot of shops in the 80s, when a lot of this stuff started coming out, were just buying so much of it and putting it on the shelves and realizing that most of it wasn't going to sell, and ended up going out of business because they went over their head. This is when this whole what was it? You had Diamond, and then you had Capital, and then you had Heroes World. These distributors. Heroes World was much smaller. They were just mostly based out of the East Coast, and then you had Capital and Diamond were doing most of the U.S. across. And this is, the downfall of Capital. What was crazy? I'm going to go off on a tangent now. I don't want to. But what was really crazy about Capital failing and then allowing Diamond to come in and take up most of the market was, what I found interesting, what this person was saying on the podcast, is that store owners had opened up a Diamond account and weren't paying the bills. And when they couldn't pay the bills to pay Diamond because they were ordering more stuff they could afford, then they would open up a Capital account and order from them. This is one of the reasons why Capital went under, is because eventually they didn't get paid. Because people were closing out accounts and not paying for them and went under, and Diamond was just able to hold out a little bit longer on that. But I don't know what got me into that, but whatever. It was just really interesting.
You kind of hit on something there in a way, though, is that, there's no room, there's not enough real estate in even, I think, the biggest of shops to carry everything. And retailers don't like to speculate, because when you speculate without input, it could have disastrous results, like you said, in the 80s, where they were just ordering stuff on spec and throwing everything at the wall and hoping it sold, and so I think one of the most important things is the customer voice, not just with your customer dollars, but with your actual voice. And if you go to a retailer and you say, look, I don't know if you're going to carry this, but I really want you to be able to carry this because I will definitely spend my money on this, that is very important. The input from the customer is so important to a retailer, especially when it comes to ordering. And not this, I read about it a week before it came out and I want you to get it for me. You got to be a little prepared as well. You got to do a little bit of your homework. But yeah, it is very important, I think, for a retailer to have that open communication with their customer, and the customer to not feel scared or nervous about asking the retailer for something. No, the retailer wants to help the customer because the customer helps the retailer. So let your voice be heard. If your shop doesn't carry things that you want, let them know, and they will do their best to get it for you.
For sure. I mean, because you walk into almost any comic book store, you're going to definitely see Marvel, you're going to see CDC, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that, is just mainstream, and a lot of the independent stuff. And there's some gems out there that just never get seen, just because, not because they're bad, it's just because there's no space on the shelf. So it's, like John said, you have to do your due diligence. Just look through the previews, do your research online. There's a ton of places that you can find where, even if you go to Previews World online, it'll let you know what's coming out. If you go to Lunar Distribution, it'll let you know what's coming out in the next 2 months and stuff like that you might be interested. Just download their catalogs and have a look. It'll keep you, up to speed on what's going on, but it also introduces you to stuff that you didn't even know was coming out because your local comic shop may not carry it. So good luck with that, guys. It's all good. All right, cool, gang. That's all that we have for you this week. If you like what you're hearing, please click subscribe to your podcast. Better yet, tell 100 of your close friends so they can come listen in as well. If you're a creator and want to promote yourself and or a project that you have coming up, want to come on to the show, amazingactioncomics.com/podcast. Fill out the form. John and I would love to have you on. Please stay up to date on everything that we've got going on at amazingactioncomics.com. And like what we've been talking about, just visit your local comic shops. Please support your local comic shops. John, where do you get your comics from?
Well, I get my comics at The Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And guess what, Angel? It's March 11th, right?
It is.
311. It's Come Original Day if you're a big 311 fan. But also, Angel, we are less than 2 months away from Free Comic Book Day, which is
Oh my goodness.
the greatest event for local comic shops across the country. It is such a good time, a lot of fun, lot of great things about Free Comic Book Day. So that's kind of why I'm a little excited. You know, spring is almost here. Free Comic Book Day is almost here. But the other thing that I really like about being at the shop is that we are now past the retail doldrums of January and February. And now here it is, March. And every week, new cool stuff is coming in, not just with comic books, but with toys and statues and pops and all the things that you love. And we got them all at the Joker's Child. Every week, we get a ton of new stuff. So, you know, if you've been once, great. If you've been twice, even better. But you know what? You should make a regular trip, not only to the Joker's Child if you're in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, but to your local comic shop because, again, every week surprises await you and really, really cool stuff for you to spend your hard-earned disposable income on. So come on down to Joker's Child or just support your local comic shop.
Fantastic. All right, with that, kiddies, we will see you this coming Thursday. So make sure you look out for another episode of the Amazing Action Comics Podcast, Indie Comic Reviews. Until next time, kiddies, be amazing, stay amazing, and read something amazing.